Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister Phạm Bình Minh. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for our keynote address, please join me to welcome to the screen the U.S. Secretary of State, Secretary Pompeo.
Hello, everyone. Secretary Pompeo here with you. I want to thank everyone who made this year's Indo-Pacific Business Forum possible, starting with their co-host, Vietnam. You've done an admirable job chairing ASEAN during a very difficult year. You know, I launched this forum back in 2018 because the United States of America knows from experience which principles will drive growth and prosperity for our Indo-Pacific friends, and indeed for all nations. We believe fundamentally in free, fair, and reciprocal trade, open investment environments, good governments, and freedom of the seas. With these good things in place, human beings are free to unleash their creative energies. Look, local jobs will sprout up, poverty will decline, technological innovation will surge forward. The United States is committed to helping create the conditions for our allies and partners to thrive. Just look at how we've taken our spirit of partnership in the region to the next level under President Trump. The new U.S. Development Finance Corporation has already invested more than $1 billion in Southeast Asia to help meet energy infrastructure and telecom needs. $1 billion. The State Department started the Asia Edge program in 2018 to expand access to energy, promote regional energy security, and create open, efficient, and transparent energy markets. The U.S. government is currently advocating 59 potential projects valued at over $185 billion. And look, we're not doing this work alone. We now have a trilateral infrastructure partnership with our friends Japan and Australia. Our countries also support the Blue Dot Network, as every nation should. When the investment climate is right for the private sector, prosperity follows. It's inexorable. And there's no better agent for sustainable economic development throughout the region than the American private sector. American companies adhere to the rule of law and transparency and have very high standards of quality for their products. Look, I say that because it's quite a contrast with the Chinese state-backed companies. As a recent example of what companies and countries can do together, Vietnam has given the green light to AES Corporation, a company based in Virginia, to go forward with a $2.8 billion LNG import terminal and power plant. The agreement AES will sign with Petro-Vietnam Gas to seal this major project will open the door to billions of dollars per year in United States LNG exports to Vietnam. That's real. That's a real win-win situation. Finally, if you're representing an American business, we want to help you enjoy similar successes and create jobs on both ends of the Indo-Pacific. Talk to any U.S. government representatives participating in the forum on how we can assist you. America is standing with our Indo-Pacific partners like never before, in a spirit of mutual prosperity, freedom, and friendship. I hope the forum goes great. God bless you all, and have a truly productive time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Pompeo. And once again, thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister Phạm Bình Minh, for joining the forum. And may we invite the delegates to come back to the seats in the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, and now the United States, Australia, Japan, and Palau have a joint announcement about a digital connectivity project in Palau, which will be shared with us in this newly released video message.
Hello everyone, President of the Republic of Palau. Palau is a rapidly developing island state known for careful environmental stewardship. Our culture of conservation has led to world-leading initiatives like the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, the Palau Pledge, and the Micronesia Challenge. These initiatives, in turn, have fueled our economy through the development of a high-value, low-impact tourism industry. This sustainable industry and the economy that depends on it are connected to the world by a single submarine cable. This makes Palau very vulnerable. If the cable was ever damaged, Palau's capacity would plummet to less than 10% of its current demand. At that level, we could barely manage essential government operations. It is imperative then for Palau to address this vulnerability by establishing a second connection. We found an opportunity to do so with the ECHO cable network, and plans were moving forward at full steam when COVID-19 hit, disrupting our access to finance. Fortunately, our close friends in Australia, Japan, and the United States reached out through their tripartite infrastructure partnership. With their help, the project is back on track, and Palau now looks forward to telecom resiliency as soon as next year. Global challenges demand international solutions and partnerships, and this pandemic is making that very clear. Palau is like too many countries in that with all our development, we are one disaster away from losing so much progress. We are fortunate to have friends like Australia, like Japan, and like the United States. With their partnership, we will continue the fight to maintain our development progress in the face of this unprecedented challenge. Thank you very much.
Foreign Minister Payne and Secretary of State Pompeo, we are here today to announce that the Palau undersea cable project will be delivered under our trilateral infrastructure partnership. I am so happy to join you. Palau needs safe, resident, and reliable communication network. This project is very important for Palau strategically and geographically. As Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan, I declare that Japan is determined to continue offering quality infrastructure for the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you.
I am delighted that Australia, Japan, and the United States, along with the government of Palau, are working together to finance and construct a new Palau submarine cable as the first project under the Trilateral Partnership for Infrastructure Investment in the Indo-Pacific. The spur cable to Palau will connect with the new cable from Singapore to the west coast of the United States, the world's longest. Palau's economy relies heavily on tourism and has been significantly affected by COVID-19. Improving connectivity and internet access across Palau's several hundred islands will open up opportunities to boost tourism, business and investment, and to provide better government services. Australia, Japan, and the United States are delivering sustainable, high-quality infrastructure projects that reflect our shared commitment to maintain and promote an Indo-Pacific region that is stable, prosperous, and resilient. This project builds on our work together, led by the Papua New Guinea government on the Papua New Guinea Electrification Partnership, with support also from New Zealand. I'm proud to be with my trilateral strategic dialogue counterparts, Minister Motegi and Secretary Pompeo, working so closely for regional prosperity and sovereignty.
Hello, everyone. Secretary Pompeo here. It's an honor to stand alongside Foreign Minister Payne of Australia and Foreign Minister Motegi of Japan. Our countries are proud to support the construction of a new undersea fiber optic cable to the Republic of Palau, along with Palau's government. We want to help the people of Palau develop their economy, strengthen links to their neighbors and the United States, and emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic more resilient and more connected. This is what free nations do. They support one another openly, transparently, and for mutual benefit. We want high-quality infrastructure, including communications infrastructure, installed all across the Indo-Pacific, not just in Palau. This project also reflects a team effort across the entire United States government. The State Department, our new International Development Finance Corporation, USAID, and the Department of Interior have all pulled together to make this happen. Since I announced our Pacific Pledge last year, the United States has now provided more than $300 million in new assistance to the Pacific Island nations, and we're just getting started. We look forward to supporting more projects like this one through our trilateral infrastructure partnership with Japan and Australia and the Blue Dot Network. The United States and the American people are proud to support the economic development of the Indo-Pacific region and to do it in cooperation with two of our closest democratic allies. Our work together supports peace, prosperity, and most importantly, freedom. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to introduce our next marquee signing for the day between AES Corporation and Petro Vietnam Gas, who will be signing the final term sheet that will establish the joint venture agreement for the development of the Sơn Mỹ LNG import terminal, a $1.4 billion project. This agreement follows Vietnam's approval of AES to build the associated Sơn Mỹ 2 power plant, which was announced at the 2019 Indo-Pacific Business Forum. And now, ladies and gentlemen, together, the terminal and power plant projects are valued at $3.2 billion. And now, please draw your attention to the screen for a brief video featuring this project.
For 40 years, AES has been providing reliable and innovative energy solutions around the world. In Vietnam, AES has been investing for over 10 years and remains committed to the economic and social development of the country. Today, AES is working to help Vietnam to meet its energy needs of the future through the development of gas and renewable infrastructures. Leveraging from our global energy solution platforms and operational excellence, we are bringing our experience and best practice to the country. AES is entering into a strategic partnership with PetroVietnam Gas, or PVGas, to develop a large LNG terminal in the south-central province of Binh Thuan, which will help meet demand for natural gas in Vietnam. AES had already signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Vietnam in 2018 to develop the terminal along the Song Mai 2, a 2.2 gigawatt gas combined cycle power plant. Together, the plant and the terminal represent an investment of $3 billion and will play an important role in supporting Vietnam's energy transition and economic growth. At AES, we are working to accelerate a greener, smarter energy solution, safely and reliably, towards a bright energy future for the people of Vietnam.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to turn the floor over to AES Corporation Executive Vice President and Chief Operating and Infrastructure Officer, Bernard Da Sanders, to provide remarks on the significance of this partnership.
involved in this. AES has been investing in partnering with the government of Vietnam for 10 years. And I am very excited with this new opportunity to show again our continuous commitment to Vietnam's economic growth. Today, I am very pleased that we have achieved this significant milestone in the development of the Song Mi LNG terminal with PV gas. This terminal, together with the Song Mi 2 combined cycle gas power plant, represent an investment of approximately $3.2 billion. This investment will play an important role in diversifying Vietnam's energy mix with imported LNG, while meeting the country's increasing demand for sustainable and affordable electricity. We also deeply value the support of the U.S. Exim Bank and the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation in this investment. This year, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the historic partnership between Vietnam and the United States. And this investment is a great example of the strong alliance between our two countries, leading to a mutual economic development, job creation, and business innovation. On behalf of AES, allow me to assure you that we remain committed to accelerating reliable and cleaner energy solutions toward a bright future for the people of Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bernard dos Santos. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to have U.S. Development Finance Corporation CEO Adam Boehler offer his congratulatory remarks.
Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to join here from Japan. And I'm not here alone. I've been with a delegation of which you see here represented with me, the chairman of the XM Import Bank, and Matt Zeiss from the Department of Energy. We've been on a full trip in Asia, and one of our stops was in Vietnam. And the entire delegation that included Treasury, State, and one other agency, Commerce. They're hard to remember. We had a lot of agencies. The whole delegation went to Vietnam, and we expressed the importance of this deal. And I want Vietnam, who was one, gracious in receiving us, but two, the Vietnamese for ensuring that on this last leg, we were able to get this done and signed. I want to thank AES. AES has been a phenomenal partner. The United States is very happy to stand behind our American private business, which are what make the United States the best country in the world. So congratulations to Vietnam. This is one of many, and it expresses the partnership and friendship of the Vietnamese and the United States. And congratulations to AES and the commercial partners. We're very excited to be partners with you in this deal.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adam Boehler. And now, ladies and gentlemen, coming in live from Tokyo, we have U.S. Exim Bank President and Chairwoman Kimberly Reed and U.S. Development Finance Corporation. Yeah, and now we'd like to give a big round of applause to Chairwoman Reed. We are now still waiting for the signal. Vâng, đề nghị bộ phận kỹ thuật hãy giúp chúng tôi kết nối với bà Kimberly Reed.
To connect to Miss Kimberly Reed. Thực ra là bà Kimberly Reed.
So I would like to invite Miss Kimberly Reed to check your signal, your microphone. I would like to ask you to check if it's on. Still, we are waiting for the signal from Ms. Kimberly Reid.
Because we didn't.
Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay.
They need to give me permission to unmute. I turned off the video.
Okay, thank you.
You're positive about it.
Hey, you guys muted us.
The floor is yours, Ms. Kimberly
I
Reid.
don't have permission to be unmuted. You need
I
to
think they can hear. Oh, no, go ahead, Kim.
Hello, this is Kimberly Reid, President and Chairman of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, greeting from Yokota Air Force Base in Japan. As CEO of the DFC, Adam Bowler stated, we are so excited to be returning from Vietnam and delivering, we hope,
Thank you so much, Ms. Kimberly Reid. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome to the stage PV Gas President and CEO, Mr. Dương Mạnh Sơn, and our additional witnesses for this signing. Joining him on stage will be Deputy Prime Minister Phạm Bình Minh, Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade Đỗ Thắng Hải, Dr. Vũ Tiến Lộc, PVN CEO Dr. Lê Mạnh Hùng, U.S. Ambassador to Vietnam Daniel Crittenbrink, and AES company representatives. President and CEO, Mr. Dương Mạnh Sơn, I would like to give the opportunity to provide additional remarks on this partnership before we turn it over to the formal signing.
High Excellency Mr. Phạm Bình Minh, Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam. High Excellency Mr. Đỗ Thắng Hải, Vice Minister of MOIT. His Excellency Mr. Vũ Tiến Lộc, President of VCCI, High Excellency Mr. Daniel Crittenbrink, U.S. America, Vietnam. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, on behalf of Petro Vietnam Gas, I would like to extend my sincere greeting and gratitude to the leader from government authorities on the distinguished guests who are present this significant signing ceremony of term sheet agreement for the joint venture agreement Sơn Mỹ Energy Terminal between PV Gas and AES. Along with the approval of under close instruction of the Vietnam government, the Committee of State Capital Management, state agencies and PVNs, as well as on basis and MOUs signed on November 12, 2017, the witness of the US President Donald Trump and the Vietnam-led President Trần Đại Quang, PVGAT and AES has negotiated the key term for GVA of Sơn Mỹ Energy Terminal. Active negotiation conducted by both parties will soon complete in the main term, bringing the signing ceremony today. The establishment of Sơn Mỹ Energy Terminal will ensure the demand for gas as well as electricity, contributing the key economic region of the southeast of Vietnam. Today, after long process negotiation between PVGAT and AES, we are very happy to witness the signing the term sheet agreement. The signing this term sheet agreement is a significant milestone because this is basics for the parties to finalize the joint ventures agreement for the charter projects in order to speed up project schedule to have a first energy by the end of 2024. On this occasion of this signing ceremony, on behalf of PVGAS, I would like to express our sincere thanks to Ministry of authorities, especially leader of the government, MOIT, and relevant authority for their support, close timelines for PV gas and AES during the process of negotiation for energy terminal project in Sydney. Our thanks also go to the negotiation team of the two sides for their wholehearted responsible work to help project achievement initial success. I hope that the GVA shall be finalized and signed by two parties soon. I would like to wish the cooperation between the PV gas and the AES more success, and the cooperation between Vietnam and the US more developed. To conclude, I thank you very much and wish you all your good health and success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dương Mạnh Sơn. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to join us in witnessing the signing, may we invite back to the stage Minister Trần Tuấn Anh. And now, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I would like to invite AES COO Bernard Dos Santos and Petro Vietnam CEO Dương Mạnh Sơn to sign this historic agreement. A big round of applause to congratulate AES Corporation and PV Gas. And now I'd like to ask the group to post a group photo to document the special occasion. May we invite you to remain on stage for a group photo. Thank you so much. Thank you. And once again, thank you Deputy Prime Minister Phạm Bình Minh for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, for our virtual attendees, please be noted that at this time there are also other concurrent sessions beginning. So please refer to the agenda to make sure that you are signed into the discussion of your greatest interest. The live from Hanoi portion of the event is being recorded and will be available for viewing later. Ladies and gentlemen, and now I'm pleased to kick off our panel session by inviting our distinguished moderator and panelists for our Promoting Infrastructure Investment in the Indo-Pacific for a Better Future panel. To take the stage, this exciting panel will explore infrastructure trends such as public-private partnerships, infrastructure financing trends, government financing tools, and local government investment. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the screens the moderator of the panel discussion, Mr. Jared Smith, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Aviation and International Affairs, U.S. Department of Transportation. The stage is yours, Mr. Jared Smith. So now I'd like to start the panel discussion with Ms. Julie Monaco.
Hello. First of all, I'm very happy to be representing Citi on this panel today. So thank you very much for having me. Citi's history in Asia dates back more than 100 years, and our teams in the region and across the globe have been deeply involved in the development of the region through banking, infrastructure, and economic projects. We all know that the need for infrastructure investment in Asia is expected to be massive in the coming decade, over $4.6 trillion. which is significantly more than what is needed in the United States, estimated at $2 trillion, Middle East at $1.5, and Latin America at $1.2. And this is far larger than any one government, bank, or development finance institution can tackle alone. And that's why it's essential to maximize cooperation through public-private partnerships, robust development of capital markets, and creative funding structures. These are the priorities we see for ASEAN governments in the coming decade or so. The trends that we're seeing in the region are that even before COVID, it was going to be a challenge to finance the infrastructure modernization needed in Asia. Developing a clear, robust, and transparent financing strategy is a crucial first step for governments seeking to attract quality private capital. Also, ESG and sustainability considerations must be central to these strategies. Even before COVID, but even more so after COVID, there is shifting the world's attention towards a sustainable recovery. The increased emphasis on sustainable infrastructure presents both a challenge and an opportunity for governments in Asia. A number of Southeast Asian nations are still growing their energy creation capacity to match their rapidly expanding populations. Yet DFIs and banks are becoming increasingly strict about aligning their project lending with firms' green and sustainability goals. Citi is part of that. We've committed not to provide project-related services for coal mines and coal-fired power plants anymore. And we're seeing more and more of that as a trend. However, ASEAN governments have an opportunity to tap into the massive shift in investor demand for ESG certified assets and projects. Year to date, the issuance of green, social, and sustainability bonds stands at $280 billion versus $193 last year. It's a 45% increase. And the overall green bond market is now approaching $1 trillion in assets and attracts a diverse, large amount of institutional investors. So ASEAN governments can tap into this momentum, reach new classes of investors, mobilize more private capital by focusing on bringing sustainable infrastructure projects to market. In order to achieve this, though, there needs to be more done around harmonizing ESG standards, clarifying definitions for sustainability, and building capacity at state and local firms for preparing the necessary documentation. In terms of the challenges on PPP, and we're going to talk about it on this panel, as widely known to the public, the biggest challenge is matching the capital available to the risk attributes needed to build infrastructure projects in emerging markets. And in recent years, we've observed an increasing active debt capital market in refinancing projects in Asia. And it's clear to us that global capital is available for viable infrastructure projects. There's large opportunities in PPP. We at Citi are keen to explore those possibilities together with you as our partners and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Julie. I would like to thank Vietnam for hosting this year's event, and thank everyone for tuning into our panel today. As we are well aware, quality infrastructure development is critical for a country's long-term economic growth and competitiveness, as it impacts economic activities by increasing productivity, facilitating trade, and promoting innovation. However, across the Indo-Pacific region, economic growth, as well as broader development goals, are hindered by a shortage of roads, mass rapid transit systems, telecommunications, power plants, water and sanitation, and other basic infrastructure. The World Bank estimates that emerging Asia-Pacific countries alone need to invest $26 trillion from 2016 to 2030, or $1.7 trillion a year, to meet its infrastructure needs and maintain its current rate of economic growth. However, currently, the region annually invests an estimated $881 billion in infrastructure, resulting in a gap. Now, on top of these challenges, the economic impact of COVID-19 will certainly only widen this financing gap. So today, we'll be delving into infrastructure financing trends, including public-private partnerships, as a method for procuring quality infrastructure development and management, and discussing options to catalyze private sector investment. Luckily for us, we have an impressive, well-rounded panel of experts that have one thing in common. They are all seeking sound infrastructure investment opportunities in the Indo-Pacific region. They range from financiers from both public and private institutions to a design, build, operate, maintain firm, as well as a prominent business advocate with a long history of promoting private-public partnerships. Now I'd like to introduce our diverse group of panelists. First, we'll have a video statement by Dr. Vu Tien Loc. Dr. Loc is the chairman and president of the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry and a leading advocate in the business community. Here is Dr. Loc's video statement.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's estimated that the Indo-Pacific region is facing a 4.6 trillion US dollar infrastructure investment gap to 2040. As President Trump said, Vietnam lies in the very heart of the Indo-Pacific region. Therefore, it is a privilege for me to share with you a few thoughts regarding Vietnam and infrastructure investment through public-private partnership in the Indo-Pacific region. Vietnam plans to spend about 20 billion US dollars on public investment in 2020. The Asian Development Bank estimated that Vietnam will need to invest 480 billion US dollars during 2017-2030, or on average 34 billion US dollars per year. The current infrastructure gap is about 14 billion US dollars per year. This investment in infrastructure is a huge opportunity for private companies, especially those from the US, Japan, India, and other countries in the Indo-Pacific region to increase its presence in Vietnam. The government in general and Vietnam in particular cannot finance this infrastructure gap alone. We must put in place a good law and policy to encourage the private sector to play a more important and equal role to partnering with the public sector. Recently, the National Assembly of Vietnam passed a public-private partnership investment law. This is an important milestone for us. This PPP regime came from humble beginnings. In 1992, with a few lines of amendment to the law on foreign investment, the National Assembly passed the legislation for both beauty and related projects. In 2015, the PPP regime was upgraded to decree status. In 2020, for the first time, the PPP law has codified provision on PPP project at the law level. It reduced uncertainty as to whether similar provision from another law or decree may apply in any specific situation. Sector open to PPP include transportation, power network and power plants, irrigation, clean water supply, water treatment, healthcare, education and training, and digital infrastructure work. We are currently working closely with the investor and other stakeholders to continue the dialogue with the government and relevant ministry. We are finalizing the PPP implementing regulation and standard contract forms. All of this will take effect from January the 1st next year. We hope to see a significant increases in investment in PPP projects in Vietnam in coming years.
Thank you to Dr. Loc. You've heard from Julie but I just want to say with 30 plus years of experience in the financial service industry, Julie Monaco is the Managing Director and Global Head for Public Sector Banking, Capital Markets, and Advisory at Citigroup. She leads a team responsible for providing financial services, including transaction banking, capital markets, advisory, sales, and trading to public sector clients globally. We're very pleased to have you here today, Julie. Next, we'll hear from Masayuki Tanimoto, who is the Managing Executive Officer and Global Head of Infrastructure and Environment Finance Group for the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, better known as JBIC, where he leads efforts to support quality, economic, and social infrastructure projects through capital, investments, and export credits. Tanimoto-san?
Hello, this is Tanimoto from Tokyo. I'm very honored to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me to this, this English panel. And yes, we are the governmental financial institutions, and the main purpose is to promote the Japanese export and the foreign direct investment. And we are very much, actively involved in the infrastructure project in the Pacific region. And I'd like to touch upon a bit about our experience in Vietnam, because it is going to be the very good example of the situation in Asia. And our relationship with Vietnam started in 1993 when we provided a bridge loan to the Vietnamese government. That was the purpose of that was to support the Vietnamese to come back to the international financial society market. And since then, we have actively involved in the development in Vietnam, and we have provided $7.5 billion in total for the more than 250 projects. And many of them are, infrastructure projects, including power. And we clearly see the trend in Vietnam that, the style of the development has changed, namely from the aid-dependent development to the, more sustainable development through the private investment. And same trend can be seen in the infrastructure as well. JBIC used to provide sovereign lending to the government 20 years ago, but now most of our product is the project financing to the PPP project. So, and so in addition to providing a loan, we are now very much focusing on the engagement with the Vietnamese government, for example, and very candid dialogue with them. That I believe that would be the very key for the successful PPP project, because especially that many people mention about the financial gap, but from my perspective, money is there. There are a lot of money. What is missing is the bankable project. And in order to make a bankable project, then sound involvement of the government sector is very much important. So we have been continuing to the kind of the high-level dialogue with Vietnamese government. For example, in relation with the PPP law, which Mr. Locke mentioned, we have conducted more than 10 times of the high-level dialogue for the several issues of the PPP. And also we collaborated with the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce so that we can make a valuable input to share our experience in the PPP sector, so that PPP project in Vietnam is going to become the very bankable. And also we are now doing the high-level dialogue in energy issue as well, including our governor, Mr. Maida's talk with the Prime Minister Hook, or Mr. Bean, of Chairman of Central Commission. So I can touch upon this issue more detail in the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanimoto-san. Next, we have Steve Renna, who is the Chief Banking Officer from the U.S. Export-Import Bank, also known as EXIM, where he oversees the various trade financing tools at EXIM's disposal to help facilitate export opportunities for U.S. companies.
Thank you very much, Jared. It's a pleasure to be here. I attended last year's session in Bangkok with EXIM Chairman Kimberly Reed, who you all heard from just a few moments ago. I'd like to use my initial comments here to provide an introduction, in some cases a reintroduction of EXIM to the audience. And reason being, for 5 of the last 6 years, the EXIM Bank has been largely inactive due to an inability of our Congress to be able to seat a quorum of directors. And without that quorum of directors, the EXIM Bank was not able to provide financing to transactions more than $10 million. But since May of 2019, the EXIM Bank is back up and running with a full complement of board members under the leadership of Chairman Reed, and we are fully re-engaged in our mission. So what is our mission? Our mission is to support U.S. jobs by facilitating U.S. exports. So how do we do that as the United States Export Credit Agency? Well, we facilitate the exports by providing a financing solution to either the exporter or the foreign buyer. So typically what you have in a situation is that in terms of providing solutions for foreign buyers, they're not able to access credit that they need in the private lending markets in order to make an acquisition of U.S. goods or services. What the EXIM Bank can do in that situation, pending approval of necessary underwriting, is provide a guarantee of the U.S. government to that foreign buyer's bank or a direct loan to that foreign buyer that enables that financing to go forward and thus allow the export transaction to occur. The U.S. EXIM Bank can provide financing solutions to the sovereign sector and also to the private sector. Julie Monaco on the panel here as one of my colleagues and Citicorp, the bank that we work with often on a number of different types of transactions. The EXIM Bank has an ability to finance in our portfolio up to $135 billion. So we have a lot of room to work. There is no export that is too large for us to engage in, no export that is too small. There is no country that we're not able to do business in, with some exceptions from credit rating purposes. And there is no industry sector, that we can't also be active in. What we have to have in a transaction is obviously that flow of U.S. exports, which is essentially what we finance. That's our financing collateral base. We need that flow of exports, as well as what Mr. Taimoto said. We need to find a bankable project. The EXIM Bank is not an aid agency. We are a financing agency to provide financing support. So the project has to be bankable. We're under a statutory requirement to find reasonable assurance of repayment. But nevertheless, our job is to lean in when credit is not accessible by foreign buyers of U.S. goods and services. So therefore, we're naturally leaning in where transactions are more risky than the private sector is willing to take on. So with that, I'll suspend and wait for the question.
Thank you, Steve. That's really helpful. I think sometimes when we talk about EXIM, some folks have misconceptions about what exactly your mission is, and I think it's very helpful at your introduction today. And now to round out our panel, we have Bob Pragada, who is President and Chief Operating Officer at Jacobs, where he has executive oversight of Jacobs' entire global operations, which ranges from technical, professional, and construction services, as well as scientific and specialty consulting. Bob?
Mr. Trevor Smith? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yes, we are still waiting for you.
Yes, I introduced Bob, and I think he's having an audio issue. Bob, we couldn't hear you. Could you try again?
Sure, Mr. Smith, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry, everyone. Good day, everyone. I'm honored to represent Jacobs at this year's Indo-Pacific Business Forum. Thank you to the USTDA, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and to all our sponsors, co-hosts, and attendees for making this possible. At the core of our business, Jacobs is challenging today and reinventing tomorrow. There is no better place to do this in the world than the Indo-Pacific region. We look forward to continuing to play a leadership role in the region. We're on the precipice of making the world a more environmental friendly, socially equitable, and economically self-sustaining world. This is a time not only of unprecedented challenges, but unprecedented change. From aerospace to healthcare, from cybersecurity to wastewater, from ports to railways, Jacobs is proud to be working with our clients globally to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges in the most innovative ways. We're proud that some of our most innovative solutions, particularly in infrastructure, have been developed by our Jacobs family in the Indo-Pacific region. A couple of examples of that. Our world-leading energy team in Australia is innovating to show the world how to create and harness green hydrogen to power and to improve our economies. In New Zealand and in Australia, we are working with private entities on new healthcare response facilities to strengthen our communities and governments against future pandemics. In Manila, we are honored to be supporting a PPP effort on one of the region's most ambitious infrastructure projects, the new Manila International Airport. When complete, it will welcome over 100 million passengers per year. And in Singapore, Jacobs is proud to be partnering with local government to implement over 50% of the country's water needs with new water or recycled water by 2060. There are countless other examples, including outside of Jacobs. For example, I've been awestruck to see innovation right here in Vietnam with the unprecedented solar revolution taking place. While we aren't blind to the many challenges the world faces, and I know we'll address many of these infrastructure-related challenges here shortly, we are optimistic that we have the tools and the resources to address these together. That's why we're proud to support the forum such as this that seek to bring us together, harness our collective ideas and knowledge to make this world a better place. Thank you again to the U.S. government and to the governments of the region for making this possible.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you all for sharing your initial thoughts. Now let's dig a little deeper. A recent Asian Development Bank publication titled Building the Future of Quality Infrastructure lays out 3 approaches to address the financing gap, such as number 1, taking steps to attract private investment by implementing reforms, such as enacting PPP laws, streamlining the public procurement regime, and increasing transparency in the bidding processes. Number 2, governments should take innovative approaches to augment public infrastructure investments. And number 3, enhancing the role of multilateral development banks and development finance institutions to catalyze and add value to private sector investment. Each of these approaches touch on the equities of our panelist organizations and help to tee up today's discussion. So let's jump right into it. On the topic of public-private partnership structure, many countries aim to use PPP structures to finance infrastructure projects. However, there are few PPPs in the Indo-Pacific. First, for Julie, can you please share your experience in recent years in this space?
I think the way we see it is that the biggest challenge is matching the capital available to the risk attributes and the tolerance. And I'm sure some of my colleagues on this panel will say the same thing. There's abundant capital available, but not really the right level of acceptable risk for the investors. So the return has to be commensurate with the risk. And if the project's too risky and does not have government or DFI or ECI mitigation, then the capital doesn't come. So getting that balance is probably the biggest challenge to getting the PPPs. there's no doubt that private capital is critical to finance all the infrastructures, and we need, and what is needed is these facilitating structures. So, for example, establishing an autonomous institution to act as an interface with the private sector, we've seen as something that can be very successful. Such institutions can be designed and established in collaborations with DFIs and global partners, and can support governments in implementing global best practices around structuring, financing, procurement, execution, contract management. So these institutions can take a few forms, including public-private partnership units. We've seen governments do that, where they have an entire unit devoted to addressing many of the topics that you just talked about that get in the way of that. Infrastructure delivery companies, infrastructure banks, and then infrastructure funds. And so these, through these institutions, the government can adopt a more systemic approach to accelerate public-private partnerships. And what we've seen where it's been successful, there's 5 key steps. One is identifying the deals that could benefit from private capital. I think often what we see sometimes is that governments will make the mistake of the most high-profile projects are the ones that they use majority of their balance sheet to finance, and those are the projects actually that are the projects that you could get private capital for. So having a process to identify which projects are bankable and how to structure them in a way to bring in and crowd in private capital and not use up the government's balance sheet on that and save that for the social projects that are not necessarily banked. Build and publish a pipeline, a deal pipeline to create transparency. Simple things as having websites and transparency, building a robust early perspective on the viability, and providing project development funding to the selected projects, and then also designing and implementing a sequential stage gate process to manage the implementation. And what we've seen is in areas that have done that, where governments get very focused on having some sort of PPP unit, and they clearly identify for investors, here are the 4 or 5 big projects on an annual basis that they think can benefit from private financing, that really helps in terms of moving the projects along.
And Bob, what trends are you seeing in PPPs across the region, positive or negative?
I believe they're positive in that if you look at some of the examples that I just gave with regards to the Manila airport, a lot of privatization of airport facilities, but can be applied to transit as well. We also saw recently for the new Noida airport outside of Delhi, the Zurich International Airport in the Swiss taking a heavy involvement there. So I see the trends continuing. I think just to add on to what Julie was saying, I think the critical element of that is the optimization of the capital provided. When we think about investment, we think about need and the investment to match the need. But really, what are the solutions that we're trying to solve for, whether it be mobility, whether it be clean water, whether it be the larger kind of macro issue, and then figuring out a solution that addresses that, because at the end of the day, the ROI on these facilities has to be there, and the way to optimize that is to actually solve the problem rather than build. So there's got to be a match there.
Tanimoto-san, where is the future headed?
Yes, I think that in the future is positive, but I think that the most important thing is the balance between the private and the public. And it is understandable that government would like to reduce the cost and the burden of the development of the infrastructure as much as possible. But if they do that too much, then things cannot be workable. And in some cases, in some countries, I see that PPP means just private. That put the all risk and the cost to the private sector. And but there are definitely the risk and the cost where the government should take. For example, credit enhancement of the purchaser of the PPP agreement, for example. Or if the project is terminated, then terminated payment must be covered by the government. And also there are issues of the convertibility of the hard currency issue. And also some countries would like to use their own law as a governing law, But you know, from the foreign investors' point of view, that we like to have the English law or New York law because it enhances the predictability of the project if something wrong happens. So for those issues that, you know, involvement of government is very important, and I'd like to, you know, the government to know that, you know, real beneficiary of these infrastructure projects are the, you know, people in the host country. So this is going to be the very important issues. Thank you.
On the topic of energy-related infrastructure, reliable energy is critical to security and economic development. Steve, how is EXIM promoting secure, sustainable, and reliable energy infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah, one of the things I think I'd like to just pick up on a couple of comments that were made by Julie and Tanimoto-san, in that crowding in of private sector capital is critically important for these infrastructure projects to be able to take place. One of the ways that you can crowd in private capital is to use public sector capital, or in the case of EXIM financing, or in the case of JBIC support and JBIC investment support, you can de-risk some of the risk in the transaction that allows the private sector capital to come in behind that public sector first risk piece that they're taking. So the EXIM Bank, when we do project financing, and whether it's in the energy sector or any sector, but certainly applies in the energy sector, we're often doing that financing as part of a consortium. We're often the lead export credit agency because of our size and our underwriting practices, and certainly the U.S. exports that are involved in a transaction. But by being there as well as an export credit agency with other export credit agencies and investment banks in the lender pool, that can bring in the private sector lenders as well.
Thanks. And Bob, how is your organization promoting secure, sustainable, and reliable energy infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific?
There we go. First, Mr. Smith, we're actually trying to be the example of being net carbon neutral or net carbon negative before 2025. And through that example, really articulating the benefits that it has to the economies, as well as then looking at solutions that really address climate change and the effects of climate change. So now, you know, as ESG principles continue to be of greater and greater priority, we're incorporating those not on exception, but into everything that we're doing as the basis for the solution that we're going to provide. And like Steve said, you know, regardless of whether that's energy, water, infrastructure, or transportation, across the board.
Now, on the topic of private sector investment in infrastructure financing, we often hear about challenges to catalyzing private sector capital. Regulatory and legal reforms in emerging markets can reduce risk and increase investor interest. COVID-19 has clearly impacted investment and defined the need for quality infrastructure investment over the long term. Julie, what is your experience in financing infrastructure investment in the Indo-Pacific, and how do you think COVID will affect infrastructure investment in the region?
Well, first of all, we've observed a more active debt capital market in financing in refinancing existing projects and allowing capital to be freed up for more infrastructure. And there's a good record now in Asia. In recent years, the 4X Indonesia power projects, the 1X Vietnam power, they've accessed the debt capital markets to raise efficient long-term debt from institutional investors, and we see that as a very positive trend. We also see foreign institutional equity capital now entering Asia in a more active way. Financial investors such as infrastructure private equity, KKR, Stonepeak, sovereign entities like the Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board, and others, and asset managers. They're all present in Asia in recent years and are looking to invest and grow in their exposure. For example, in Indonesia in 2019, Citi helped CPPIB acquire a 45% stake in the Sapali toll road partnering with Astra International. And as more of these infrastructure assets come to market and the private sector financial investors seek these quality assets, it does allow the asset owners and the developers to recycle the capital, as I mentioned. And another trend we're seeing, we just talked about it in terms of what was announced earlier in this meeting on Vietnam in terms of consortiums forming around the power sector, and of course the transaction announced today with AES. And I think we're going to see more partnerships in that. Bob has talked about renewable space, and we're seeing private capital coming there. In terms of the impact on COVID and the shifts that have happened there's a few things. One is that and I talked about it earlier about the fact that we've seen just an explosion of sustainability bonds, not just green bonds, but social and sustainable impact bonds. And part of that is the COVID response. And we're starting to see projects shifting not to just building, not just handling airports and toll roads and ports and that type of infrastructure, but because of COVID, there's a renewed focus on healthcare infrastructure. So we see in the Philippines the announced reallocation of infrastructure for their to rebuild their healthcare infrastructure. We are seeing, in Thailand also the diverting infrastructure funding over to healthcare capacity and stimulus plans. So there are some places where we're also seeing where funds are getting reallocated in the short term to other things outside of infrastructure. And that's not just from governments, that's also from the development banks who have shifted some of their funding to really focus on the COVID response. But while some of that infrastructure is being reallocated, we are still seeing governments announcing their plans for next year. Indonesia has just announced its 2021 budget, 15% will be dedicated to infrastructure as one example. And we're seeing others. And I think what we're going to see, though, is that those announcements around infrastructure will focus on higher priority for technology infrastructure, ICT type of infrastructure, because I think in this new world, as we're all experiencing tonight, technology is becoming more and more important, and the healthcare infrastructure. And so there might be a slight different prioritization, but as we talked about, I think there's a lot of institutional investors out there that can see those projects aligned to the ESG and the sustainable development goals, and that on a net basis, once we get through this, it should be a positive trend for infrastructure investment.
Tanimoto-san, in a similar vein, how do you think COVID will impact infrastructure investment in the region, and what are some of the challenges and opportunities ahead?
Yes, I see some delay and difficulty in the specific project in the construction stage. They are struggling that, and probably we need to seek a very amicable solution for the successful completion of the project. And other than that, regarding the new project, as Julie-san mentioned, that probably we are going to see the shift in the focus. And for example, in the transport sector, probably we need to full review of the future demand of the traffic, like airport or railways. But at the same time, there will be the need for the COVID resilient infrastructure, like a health sector and so on. So probably we should focus more on this resilient sector against COVID in the future. Thank you.
Steve, what are the trends for collaboration in project finance, and what are the challenges in navigating partnerships?
Yeah, trends. One of the trends that the Exim Bank has experienced on an upward trajectory is us collaborating with other export credit agencies to be able to share some of the financing risk on transactions and projects. That's an important trend there. And in addition to that, one of the things that I wanted to also point out before I to go any further is that I did want to also note that the sectors that we are seeing the most resilient and in demand through COVID are the telecom sector and essentially digital, healthcare, water, and energy. So I just wanted to point that out because others had made those comments as well. So going back to then collaboration, so we've had this increasing trend in collaboration with respect to export credit agencies. One of the things we're working on very closely on the U.S. home front is our collaboration with the Development Finance Corporation. So we're looking to collaborate more closely on a project in which the Exim Bank's piece of it can be financing the U.S. export contributions to that project. The Development Finance Corporation can finance the development costs on the ground. So we're working on that specifically with them, but we also, with a whole of government approach with other agencies, such as the Trade Development Agency, which is the kind of leading edge for projects around the world and getting U.S. support for them. And so we're trying to create more of a whole of government approach on the U.S. government side, collaborate with more export credit agencies. And just about a month ago, I was actually in Serbia and having conversations with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, as well as the European Investment Bank, talking about how we can collaborate as well with the development banks in order to fill the financing or the investment gaps that are needed in order to make a project viable.
And moving now to the topic of procurement and quality infrastructure investment. Efficient, transparent, and effective procurement is the first step in developing quality infrastructure. The U.S. government and other G20 countries are working to catalyze procurement processes that support quality infrastructure development, especially through the inclusion of life cycle cost calculation. Tanimoto-san, how do you see quality infrastructure investment in the region?
That Jared-san comments on the lifetime cost is very important concept, and probably there are a lot of criticism for the Japanese export that the price is expensive. But if you look at in the lifetime, then it must be not that expensive. So I think that it is very important to spread the concept of this quality infrastructure project, and also in this regard that Blue Dot Network is one of the two to promote that kind of concept. And I think that we will proceed as Japan and the Japanese government of financial institution toward that direction. Thank you.
Now, Bob, do you have any advice for regional governments looking to issue concessions that would draw the most robust set of actors and ensure competition?
Probably the best. That'd probably be the first one, where a quals-based type selection can really to attract the best talent, not only locally, but then the second part is around maybe some of those national statutory or legal requirements of tech transfer into the country. And so what I mean by that is that we have about 7,000 people within the region today. We're doing the work of probably double that number when we look at our global delivery capability. We're getting the best talent from around the world, delivering solutions locally in the Indo-Pacific by our local teams, working with the local teams. So I think the more governments can allow for some of those open platforms while still staying true to some of the requirements that they have is probably the ticket there.
And Julie, the same question. Do you have any advice for regional governments looking to issue concessions that would draw the most robust set of actors and ensure competition?
Yeah, I have a few. One is really fund programs to enhance the project preparation. So including around the planning, due diligence, capacity building, because I think that improving the whole upstream process to bring bankable projects to market is incredibly important, and I think that more has to be invested there. And then I think that and this is not necessarily for the regional governments. I think one, they can create specialized institutions to oversee the increased transparency and improve the procurement. And then I think the rest of it really is, if they do that, the rest of it is on us in terms of everyone that's going to get engaged in those projects. And I think what can be done to support them is really what was discussed here around improving financial engineering, structuring, ensuring the proper allocation of risk. We at Citi, as said, we work very closely with Exim and a lot of the different development organizations, and we're seeing a very positive trend that when the project is prepared correctly, when it is an open, transparent process that allows for competition and often allows for companies from different locations to all come in and work on the same project, we're also seeing the development organizations really start to work together, which we've been encouraging for many, many years, because none of them have enough capital to do these projects on their own, but they have enough capital to crowd in the private sector if it's structured correctly. So that's what we'd like to see more of. We're seeing the trend in the positive direction, but we'd love to see more of it.
So I'd like to turn to Steve. Your thoughts on quality infrastructure investment?
I think I would echo the comments that the prior panelists have made, particularly what Julie said in her final comments that she was making with respect to the overall procurement process. If you have a better, more open, more competitive, transparent procurement process, you're going to attract more quality bidders to a project, and therefore the resulting project you are going to get is going to be of higher quality. It's really as simple as that. For too many times, we have seen U.S. companies discouraged from competing in markets around the world because the procurement process is not well developed, it's not transparent, it's not competitive, it doesn't have a fixed time to the end of it. And if they see that these necessary elements for them to compete are not there, they're simply not going to compete. And this is important to the Exim Bank because if U.S. companies are not competing because of procurement processes that are less than where they should be, then we can't engage as being a financing solution to the winners, a U.S. company winning that competition.
Now, on the topic of infrastructure investment looking to the future, we have discussed some of the challenges and opportunities of infrastructure investment in the Indo-Pacific and look forward to convening again next year. But before we wrap up, we will have Dr. Locke address the last question of the day by video, which is appropriate since he kicked off today's panel discussions. With that said, Dr. Locke, what do you think are the biggest opportunities over the next year in infrastructure investment in the Indo-Pacific? Dr. Locke?
Thank you, Jared, for the question. In my opinion, the biggest opportunity over the next year in infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific region are as following. Renewable energy provides major opportunity for private investment and witness high growth rate if good policies are in place and power purchase price by host government is reasonable. Recently, we have seen this trend in solar power farms and wind farms in the region. Digital infrastructure works will be the first priority of all economy. It is a great opportunity for the private sector to cooperate with the public sector to develop a digital industry and advance the digital transformation agenda. In the context of Vietnam, there is a new way of foreign investment. The Vietnam government is investing in digital economy, traditional infrastructure such as energy, roads, and posts, we also put in place new law and policy to attract and sustain these new ways of FDI. Vietnam become more attractive to foreign investors due to its deep integration in the global market and recent free trade agreement, especially the CPTPP and the EVFTA. Vietnam is forecasted to grow at 2.8% in 2020, and according to the SBC, Vietnam is forecasted to grow at 8.1% in 2021. Therefore, the biggest opportunity for infrastructure investment in the next 12 months in Vietnam and the Indo-Pacific region are in digital infrastructure works, energy, post, and roads.
And with that, I would like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today and contributing to this essential and lively conversation on infrastructure investment in the Indo-Pacific. On behalf of Secretary Elaine Chao and the U.S. Department of Transportation, I want to thank our panelists for taking the time to share with us their valuable insights on this important topic. It is a topic near and dear to the Department of Transportation, as well as our engagement with our partners in the Indo-Pacific region, which is why Secretary Chao traveled to the region last year, and Acting Undersecretary Joel Zabat visited Vietnam. And of course, I want to thank our Vietnamese hosts, especially the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the U.S. Department of State for organizing this important event. Again, thanks to everyone that joined us from afar for this virtual discussion. Until next year.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jerry Smith, for moderating the panel discussions, and thank you other panelists for joining us today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have a few minutes for the coffee break, and the coffee and beverages, as well as other tea break, will be served in the lobby. Please enjoy, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Bây giờ thì chương trình hiện đang tạm ngừng ít phút để cho có cái giờ giải lao. Ít phút nữa thì chương trình sẽ được tiếp tục. Xin quý vị giữ màn hình. Một lần nữa, như hình ảnh quý vị đang xem trên màn hình được truyền hình trực tiếp từ Hà Nội, và đây là diễn đàn thương mại Ấn Độ-Thái Bình Dương do phía Việt Nam tổ chức, và bên phía còn lại đó là phía Hoa Kỳ. Người đứng đầu bên phái đoàn phía Hoa Kỳ đó là Ngoại trưởng Hoa Kỳ, ông Mike Pompeo. Bên phía Việt Nam thì người cao nhất đó là ông Phó Thủ tướng kiêm Ngoại trưởng Bộ Ngoại giao Phạm Bình Minh cũng tham dự ngày hôm nay. Và trước đó thì hai bên đã ký kết một hợp đồng nhà máy điện ở tại Mỹ Sơn trị giá hàng tỷ đô la Mỹ. Đó cũng là trong cái nỗ lực mà Việt Nam giúp cho giảm cái việc chênh lệch cán cân thương mại quá nhiều trong những năm vừa qua, khi mà xuất khẩu qua Hoa Kỳ nhiều, nhưng mà ngược lại thì những cái công ty cũng như là những tập đoàn của Hoa Kỳ vào Việt Nam thì ít. Do đó đây cũng là một trong những nỗ lực đó của hai bên. Đồng thời thì vào lúc mà ông Mike Pompeo đang tham dự buổi diễn đàn này, đó là lúc mà ông đang có chuyến công du đến Sri Lanka và Indonesia. Một điều đặc biệt đó là trong những ngày trước chúng tôi cũng đã đưa ra cái thông tin, đó là nhiều khả năng ông Cố vấn An ninh Quốc gia Mỹ O'Brien sẽ đến Hà Nội. Thì ngày hôm nay chúng tôi có thể cập nhật cho quý vị biết, đó là với những tin tức, nguồn tin riêng mà chúng tôi có được, thì vào ngày 30 tháng 10 2020 ông O'Brien sẽ đến Hà Nội. Đồng thời sau khi mà ông Mike Pompeo xong công việc ở tại Indonesia, nếu không có gì thay đổi, ngày 31 tháng 10 ông Mike Pompeo cũng sẽ có mặt ở tại Hà Nội. Như vậy là có tới hai nhân vật cấp cao của Hoa Kỳ đến Hà Nội vào lúc này, và rất trùng khớp với những thông tin mà bên phía chúng tôi có được, đó là Việt Nam rất muốn ông Donald Trump, Tổng thống Mỹ, dự thượng đỉnh ASEAN vào tháng 11 này. Và nếu như mọi thứ đều diễn ra như vậy thì có lẽ là ông Donald Trump nhiều khả năng, nếu như mà ông tái thắng cử, thì có thể xem Việt Nam là đất nước đầu tiên trong ông có một cái chuyến công du ngay sau khi mà ông thắng cử nhiệm kỳ thứ hai. Chúng ta sẽ chờ đợi xem như thế nào. Nhưng mà trước mắt chúng ta biết được đó là ông O'Brien sẽ đến Hà Nội vào ngày 30 tháng 10. Một chuyến đi rất đáng chú ý, và được biết chuyến đi này của ông còn đến cả Đài Loan. Và trước đó thì chúng tôi có được cái nguồn tin đó là ông sẽ đi Đài Loan rồi mới đến Việt Nam. Nhưng Hà Nội thuyết phục cũng như là muốn ông O'Brien đến Việt Nam trước rồi mới đến Đài Loan. Chúng ta sẽ xem lịch trình trong những ngày tới của ông O'Brien, Cố vấn An ninh Quốc gia Hoa Kỳ như thế nào. Đó là những thông tin hiện thời chúng tôi có thể cho quý vị biết được. Còn những thông tin thú vị hơn nữa, đó là ông Mike Pompeo sẽ đến Việt Nam như thế nào, ông sẽ gặp ai. Hiện thời chúng tôi chưa tiết lộ được, mặc dù chúng tôi đã có thông tin. Quý vị cố gắng chờ đợi thêm 1-2 ngày nữa. Và một lần nữa quý vị xin giữ màn hình. Hiện thời thì ban tổ chức đang có ít phút giải lao để mọi người dùng trà. Tiếp tục trở lại với phần 2 của chương trình ngày hôm nay. Và trong phần 1 của ngày hôm nay thì cả hai bên đã nói đến rất nhiều về Ấn Độ và Thái Bình Dương, một Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương rộng mở và an toàn cho khu vực. Đồng thời thì Việt Nam sẽ là một trong những ví dụ mà Hoa Kỳ đưa ra trong một cái diễn đàn kinh tế lần này. Trước khi mà chúng tôi đưa cho quý vị biết cái thông tin này thì diễn đàn kinh tế, diễn đàn thương mại Ấn Độ-Thái Bình Dương đã được tổ chức lần đầu tiên năm 2018 ở tại thủ đô Washington của Hoa Kỳ. Năm ngoái 2019 thì được tổ chức ở tại Bangkok, Thái Lan, và năm nay lần thứ 3 thì được tổ chức ở tại Hà Nội. Tuy nhiên năm nay vì lý do Covid-19 thì bên phía Hoa Kỳ và bên phía Việt Nam đã gặp nhau bằng hình thức trực tuyến. Và một trong những nội dung của diễn đàn thương mại Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương lần này, Hoa Kỳ muốn đưa ra cho khối Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương thấy một ví dụ điển hình, đó là Việt Nam là nước mà mua chất hóa lỏng của Hoa Kỳ nhiều nhất ở tại khu vực Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương, và Hoa Kỳ sẽ đưa ra cái ví dụ đó để cho nhiều nước khác tiếp tục sẽ nhìn thấy cái thành công của Việt Nam để mua khí hóa lỏng của Hoa Kỳ trong thời gian tới. Cuối cùng của cái buổi diễn đàn lần này thì được biết là sẽ có một cái lễ kỷ niệm 25 năm quan hệ Việt-Mỹ. Thì như quý vị biết, ở đầu năm 2020 cho đến nay, rất nhiều cái buổi lễ cũng như là những cuộc hội họp lớn nhỏ lồng kèm trong đó đều có những buổi tiệc cũng như những cái lễ mà hai bên Hoa Kỳ và Việt Nam kỷ niệm 25 năm quan hệ ngoại giao. Chúng ta sẽ chờ đợi xem những hình ảnh đó trong cái buổi ngày hôm nay. Ở cuối chương trình, đó là lịch trình mà ban tổ chức đưa ra mà chúng tôi có được. Vâng, trong lúc mà chúng tôi đợi ban tổ chức nghỉ giải lao thì chúng tôi vừa nhận được một cái breaking news của Bộ Ngoại giao Hoa Kỳ cũng như là Sứ quán Hoa Kỳ ở tại Hà Nội đưa ra cho biết, đó là Việt Nam và Hoa Kỳ vừa đạt được cái thỏa thuận hợp tác tổng thể giữa Delta Offshore Energy và đây là một cái dự án điện từ khí hóa lỏng bạc liêu sử dụng thiết bị và dịch vụ của Hoa Kỳ trị giá hơn 3 tỷ đô la Mỹ. Và đây là tên dự án, đó là dự án điện khí sử dụng khí hóa lỏng bạc liêu. Dự án điện này sẽ có cái tên là Delta Offshore Energy Bạc Liêu, sẽ cung cấp điện cho tỉnh Bạc Liêu và Việt Nam, giúp giải quyết nhu cầu năng lượng sạch, ổn định và giá cả cạnh tranh phục vụ cho đất nước cũng như nền kinh tế đang trên đà phát triển. Mục đích của việc ký kết là sử dụng các thiết bị và dịch vụ kỹ thuật trị giá 3 tỷ đô la từ nhiều tập đoàn của Mỹ và sử dụng công nghệ và kỹ thuật tốt nhất của Hoa Kỳ. Dự án với tổng mức đầu tư lên đến 50 tỷ đô la trong vòng 25 năm và dự kiến lượng nhập khẩu lên đến 3 triệu tấn khí hóa lỏng mỗi năm. Đây là dự án sử dụng LNG sản xuất điện đầu tiên do khu vực tư nhân sở hữu và vận hành, được phê duyệt trong quy hoạch tổng thể phát triển điện lưới quốc gia với hình thức 100% vốn đầu tư trực tiếp từ nước ngoài theo luật đầu tư của Việt Nam. Như quý vị thấy là khi mà buổi tọa đàm cũng như là diễn đàn thương mại kinh tế Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương đang diễn ra, thì vừa rồi tôi vừa đọc cho quý vị một cái tin breaking news cũng liên quan đến cái việc mà chúng tôi vừa nói, đó là Việt Nam trong những năm vừa qua mua khí đốt hóa lỏng của Hoa Kỳ rất nhiều. Và một lần nữa trong buổi tọa đàm này, Hoa Kỳ sẽ cho khối Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương thấy được Việt Nam là một ví dụ điển hình trong cái việc mà thành công cũng như là đang mua rất nhiều khí hóa lỏng của Hoa Kỳ trong những năm vừa qua, với cái mong muốn là nhiều nước khác trong khối Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương, trong khu vực Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương sẽ làm một cái điều tương tự như Việt Nam. Như vậy có thể nói là trong những năm tới, người dân Cà Mau và chắc chắn sẽ còn nhiều nơi khác nữa sẽ dùng điện, mà với sự hợp tác năng lượng của Hoa Kỳ, đó là một cái điểm mà điều rất là thú vị. Xin chúc mừng người dân Bạc Liêu. Đó là những thông tin mà chúng tôi vừa nhận được, một cái breaking news do Bộ Ngoại giao Hoa Kỳ vừa gửi ra ngay trong lúc diễn đàn thương mại Ấn Độ Thái Bình Dương lần thứ 3 được tổ chức tại Hà Nội diễn ra.
Who are joining us virtually, we have several dynamic options for you to choose from, and please refer to the agenda to make sure that you are signed in the discussion of greatest interest to you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, live in Hanoi, I am pleased to welcome to the stage from the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi, our cultural counselor, Robert Hansen, who will be moderating the panel discussion on promoting the regional ethanol strategy.
So, good morning to everyone here in Vietnam and across the Indo-Pacific region, and good evening to everyone tuning in from the United States. As agricultural counselor at the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi, Vietnam, I'm happy to welcome you to our panel discussion on promoting a regional ethanol strategy. The objective of this panel is to discuss how the expanded use of ethanol can help countries in the Indo-Pacific region meet their fuel needs in an environmentally and economically sustainable manner. Today's panel is made possible by the expertise of the U.S. Grains Council, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade, also known as MOIT here in Vietnam. You will hear from U.S. Grains Council on the economic and commercial benefits of expanded ethanol use, as well as on the policy challenges of increasing ethanol production and use capacity. We will also hear from the Director General, John Duy Dom, of MOIT's Domestic Markets Department on Vietnam's policies that support the use of ethanol in Vietnam. Later this morning, you will also witness the notable signing of an MOU between the U.S. Grains Council and MOIT to formalize cooperation in the development of ethanol capacity in Vietnam. I'd like to thank everyone at the U.S. Grains Council and MOIT for their collaboration, which made this event possible, including our sponsors and hosts, the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. To start this panel discussion, which will begin with some pre-recorded presentations, I would like to introduce USDA Foreign Agricultural Service Associate Administrator, Mr. Danny Whitley.
Good morning to all of you in Hanoi and greetings to everyone joining virtually from across the Indo-Pacific region. I'm Daniel Whitley, Associate Administrator of the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service. I am thrilled to welcome everyone to the panel, Promoting a Regional Ethanol Strategy. Although I would have loved to address all of you in person, I am thrilled to be addressing you virtually nonetheless. Biofuels play an important role in U.S. agriculture and energy policies, as well as our environmental stewardship and our sustainability. Despite current demand and price fluctuations for biofuels as a result of COVID-19, I am optimistic we will soon begin to see the return of historical demand for trends and prices of global biofuels. In the long term, there's also significant opportunity to leverage the advantages of biofuels as countries around the world continue to seek ways to meet greenhouse gas reduction targets at competitive prices. The environmental benefits are part of the reason the United States, Brazil, the European Union, and more than 24 other countries mandate or encourage blending of biofuels in transportation fuel. Trade is a critical component of the U.S. biofuel strategy. USDA actively engages with foreign governments to expand global market access and remove trade barriers restricting the flow of U.S. biofuels and feedstocks. To make this happen, USDA works closely with the U.S. ethanol industry, including the U.S. Grains Council, who will be speaking later on this panel. The Indo-Pacific region, including Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines, holds significant export potential for U.S. biofuels. But that is just one part of the story. The other part, these countries and others in the Indo-Pacific region are interested in building, growing, and strengthening their own domestic industries, as well as implementing policies encouraging the use of biofuels. To that end, USDA and all of our attachés around the world, we will continue to assist governments in this mutually beneficial endeavor. USDA also continues to support the efforts of the U.S. Grains Council in providing technical support and collaboration on ethanol production for countries in this region. I am so sorry I will miss the panel discussion, but I know it will highlight and illustrate how the U.S. ethanol industry continues to make strides in support of regional biofuels growth. I wish you all a very successful panel discussion and business forum. Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you, Associate Administrator Whitley, and everyone at USDA and FAS for your support. Our first speaker today is Mr. Firdaus Hussain, Regional Ethanol Consultant for the U.S. Grains Council based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Mr. Firdaus will speak on the economic and commercial benefits of ethanol fuel.
Plants are running at about 92% capacity at any given time. With advancing agricultural technology, farmers are becoming more efficient in growing crops, corn crops harvesting a robust 168 bushels of corn per acre in 2019. for a total production of 13.7 billion bushels. Meanwhile, agriculture producers have been reducing per bushel inputs like land, fertilizer, water. Farmers now have access to GPS-guided seed planting and soil data analytics to assist them in planting their crops. This gives them more yields per acre as compared to where they started back in the 1920s and 30s. The U.S. economy benefits a lot from an ethanol industry. 2019 was a relatively challenging year with trade policy decisions that pressured down global crop marketing, coupled with bad weather and creating havoc across the U.S. Corn Belt. Many were looking for a fresh start in 2020. Last year, U.S. ethanol had grossed over $21 billion and its co-products had contributed about over $7 billion in gross value. Now, based on average prices and product yields in 2019, a typical dry mill of ethanol plant added about roughly $1.20 of additional value, which is equivalent to 31% value to every bushel of corn processed. In 2019 alone, the production of 15.8 billion gallons of ethanol and 39.6 million metric tons of co-products and distillers oil had substantial economic impact, including close to 69,000 direct jobs, 280,000 indirect and induced jobs, over 43 billion contribution to the GDP, and 23.3 billion in household income. Ethanol market has increased significantly, especially in the last 10 years. A decade ago, the world export market was slightly above 750 million gallons. Today, the market has grown almost 330% since then to a whopping 2.5 billion export market, as many countries adopt the use of ethanol either for fuel or industrial use. The US now holds about 61% of world exports, making them the single biggest top exporter for both denatured and anhydrous ethanol. Brazil holds about 25% market share with a total output of 8.6 billion gallons per year. The European Union at 4%, China at 2%, and India at 2%. In recent years, we have seen a growing use of ethanol globally, with just over 13 billion gallons in 2000 to more than 29 billion gallons in 2019. Last year, ethanol totaled nearly 2.5 billion gallons as countries increasingly recognize the role for trade in meeting policy mandates. More than 60 countries currently have ethanol policies, a number that is growing as more and more countries seek this opportunity to capture the environmental, human health, and economic benefits of ethanol. And the US Grains Council is in the forefront of developing these partnerships around the globe to expand the worldwide use of ethanol and the worldwide global ethanol market. Now, it wouldn't be right if we don't address the elephant in the room. COVID-19 has significant impacts on the global ethanol market. We saw this year overnight demand disappearance. Gasoline demand dropped 50% in most countries due to stay-at-home orders. People are not moving around in the city, not as much anymore. Businesses are closed, and that has significant impact on global gasoline demand. And refineries are running at a low capacity. That has significant impact on ethanol because less blending for E10 or even 5% or whatever the amount is. Half of US ethanol industry is offline or operating under capacity, but today we have about 90% back online. based on current export data, the numbers are much lower as compared to 2019 or even the previous years. This is simply because of lack of demand on the fuel side. With the global glut of crude oil, price is pressuring down on price pressure is easing as April on crude oil. Now currently crude oil is about $40 per barrel. It makes it difficult for use of ethanol when gasoline is much cheaper. While we see some recovery beginning in China, the European Union and the US, but many countries are still slow in opening their countries, and we may see things getting a bit harder as structural change occurs. But all that on the fuel side is changing. We see an increase in demand for industrial ethanol, especially in hand sanitizers, as more countries have a requirement to use hand sanitizers for sanitization, and this has significantly impacted the global ethanol use. Now, in terms of impact on global ethanol production, forecast is down 20% in 2020, and we could probably not see a recovery not until 2022. This year itself, the total ethanol production was just about 90 billion gallons. 90 billion liters, as compared to the year before, it was well above 115 billion liters. This is namely because of lower production volumes out of each of these individual countries, and also demand disappearance, as we talked about previously. Now, the US ethanol export market has been quite strong in previous years, with significantly export out our ethanol to the three biggest countries, which is Brazil, Canada, and India, have been the biggest importers of US ethanol. Previously, back in 2016, right until 2018, we've seen some flows into China, but that has significantly reduced due to trade tariff. Now, Brazil has been the second largest exporter of ethanol. They are also the biggest buyer of US ethanol, with an average of 386 million gallons per year from 2016 to 2019. Canada and India has been the second and third biggest importers of US ethanol, with an average of 327 million gallons and 152 million gallons respectively. This chart is just to show you how much volumes are flowing as compared to the previous years. Fuel ethanol exports is down 6.8% in the first half of 2020. This is hampered by this is mainly due to a poor second quarter as many countries go into lockdown. The ones in red are just showing, although there are volumes flowing into these countries, but we're seeing lower demand or lower import volumes into these countries as compared to the year before. Canada and Brazil are showing lower volumes exported into these countries. However, Mexico and Europe are showing slightly higher volumes compared to the year. India still stays strong this year, mainly due to industrial ethanol demand. And the use of sanitizers and other uses to combat the COVID-19 in India. Now, many countries are adopting biofuels as an option for renewable energy. Ethanol is still widely used in fuel due to its high octane rating and environmentally friendly benefits. Just to highlight a couple of countries, Indonesia has already a pre-blended ethanol I wouldn't say mandate, a 3% inclusion rate that is allowed in their fuels, and is allowed as way of pre-blended. That means that Indonesia now allows fuel traders or gasoline blenders to blend 3% of ethanol into their fuel, and they are allowed in their specifications as an import. Indonesia currently does not blend any ethanol because of because of tariff of imported ethanol, and the production of ethanol in Indonesia is not enough to meet the 3%. Philippines has an E10 blend mandate, which is currently in place. Colombia has an ethanol 10%, which is an E10. Brazil has an effective blend of 27.5%. India has an E10 blend mandate as well, but the current national average blend is approximately about 5% currently. Now, why are many beginning to adopt ethanol in fuels? I think it's mainly driven by three main categories. First is the security. Agriculture products are renewable and grown throughout the year. The security of these feedstocks are important to promote a stable output. Now, countries seem to shy away from having to use too much fossil fuels. They want to reduce their dependency on fossil fuels because agricultural products are grown widely, especially in Southeast Asia, and having a security of these products will promote the stable output of this of fuels. Biofuels and ethanol in biofuels also helps promote prosperity and demand for agricultural products, in turn creating more jobs and help economic growth. Thirdly is sustainability. Non-crop feedstock like agricultural waste can be and will be preferred for future biofuels and chemicals. Ethanol today can be the low carbon fuel that will help to reduce emissions. Ethanol has major benefits, as you all know. Firstly, the health benefits. Ethanol displaces hydrocarbon substances like aromatics in gasoline. This in turn helps reduce emissions of air toxics along with particulate matter, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, and exhaust hydrocarbons. This ethanol in turn also helps the environment by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Corn ethanol from a typical dry mill only has 40 to 45% lower greenhouse gas emissions than gasoline. And the third benefit, which everyone kind of looks at today, well, not as necessarily today, but prior to this, is economic and how beneficial it is to the country. Historically, ethanol has been cheaper than other oxygenates, making it a viable option in terms of a gasoline blending component. Ethanol is, in recent years, historically is lower priced than MTBE, and to some years in 2017 and 2018 is cheaper than gasoline itself, making it a viable blending component. Now, the expansion of ethanol in Southeast Asia, specifically in Philippines, the current blend rate of ethanol fuel is 8.87%. Now, the Department of Energy Environment wants to make available 85% blend to be promoted by 2025. In Vietnam, however, E5 fuel is only available for RON 92. Vietnam now has a policy goal to move to E10 by 2020, but it's probably likely to be delayed due to COVID-19. In Indonesia, there's a roadmap to achieve E10 by 2025. The current effective blending rate, or the current inclusion rate for ethanol, is 3%, but it's only achieved through imported pre-blended fuel. Now, in recent months or in recent years, big oil companies are heavily investing their resources in biofuels. We've seen the partnership between Shell and Kosan to build a JV company called Raízen. Raízen now is the third biggest ethanol producer in Brazil and has offices around the world to promote ethanol. Now, similarly,